I really believe, and I know you have a lot of entrepreneurs listening, especially new entrepreneurs. Can we stop saying that we want more followers when we don't even engage the ones we have now? Can we just keep it real? Like, you want more people to ignore? That's whack. Right? Because so much of what I built has really come from other people saying, I vouch for you. I'm an advocate for you. You made me feel this way. And I didn't even know who they were or what they did. It's just I treat everyone with the same level of kindness and respect and integrity. Right. So the people pillar has been very instrumental. And I also think the people that we're around dictate the language that we use.
This is the Gold Digger Podcast.
We're going to dive right in, Patrice. So much of the financial information that is coming at us is, let's be honest, coming from white, wealthy men. What is something that you keep hearing these financial quote experts share about that you disagree with?
One thing.
We
can start with the one thing. I would
Yes.
say not sharing with people that any personal finance journey you go on is really 80% mindset and behavior, and it's only 20% skill set. And so when we shame people for not having this concrete skill set stuff, it doesn't really support their journey at all, because truly, foundationally, there is no personal finance success without personal development. That's something that I've had to learn over these last almost 2 decades in supporting people with personal finance. I went back to school to get an MBA in financial psychology and behavioral finance, because there's a missing link. If you want to keep talking to people about personal finance, but you don't talk to them about all the parts of their life that impacts their finances, even when they're not thinking about it, they will always experience failure after failure. Even people who achieve great financial success, at some point, it has to become about sustainability. You can hit it, but can you keep it? And so if we don't cultivate the entire person, then we just lose, and we have to keep starting over and over and over. So I would say that's one big thing that really has my attention in this season.
I think this is such a powerful place to start, because so much of financial advice out there is so focused on the skill set. And it's like, just conquer this skill set, just learn this and become an expert in this skill set. But you're so right. If you don't have the mindset to back it up, your default is not going to be leveraging these skill sets, is going to be going back to what you know and where you come from. I think that's so powerful.
I mean, every single time. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. Many of us are simply on autopilot. We are doing the things that we learned, most of us in childhood and in adolescence. And a lot of the lessons that we learned just because of where our parents were from or what their experience was, or any adult that had influence over us. We're doing the same things that they're doing, even though we may have, achieved greater education or greater employment. We still find ourselves going back to those cycles of paycheck to paycheck, or making really rash decisions, or making very emotional decisions. And when you don't address that, you can't really change anything. I always say, you can't recondition what you don't recognize. And when you're on autopilot, it's essentially saying you're asleep at the wheel of your life. You don't even recognize that your habits and behaviors are unsupportive of the things that you say you want. And as long as you stay out of alignment, you're out of alignment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Tell me how you got to this place. Did you always think you would become this expert with finance? Like, how did you arrive where we are today?
Okay. No 5-year-old is like, you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to be a financial psychologist. Like, nobody is ever saying anything like that. No, I'm first generation American. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles in an area called Leimert Park, not the best neighborhood. And Jenna, when I was 6, 7, years old, I used to tell my family, I don't belong here. Like, I got to do something. I knew as a very little kid that there was just more. And so I was always in search of the more. I always felt a great sense of purpose. And so I was very intentional about getting good grades, going to the University of Southern California. I thought education was the key to everything. I did all of the things. I followed all of the steps, graduated with honors, started a real estate and mortgage brokerage at 22 years old, and literally thought I had hit it. And then 26 years old, the seven-figure business that I built went belly up in the recession, and I
Mm.
literally went from seven figures to scraping up change. By then, I was a new mother. I actually was in the hospital on bed rest. I fell down the stairs at 10 weeks pregnant, and it led me into preterm, or 20 weeks pregnant, excuse me. It led me into preterm labor. I was in the hospital for 10 weeks watching the banks that I work with close down day by day by day. And then my daughter was born 10 weeks prematurely at 30 weeks. Everything that I thought I had done the right way, right? And all the steps I followed came to a head in 2008 when I literally lost everything and had to start over. And I had what I would call a come to Jesus moment, a deep bathroom floor moment where I had just chased the power man down with my baby on my hips, begging them to turn the lights back on,
Mm.
or my daughter's milk would spoil. And I went back. He's now my ex-husband. My husband at the time took my daughter on a walk, and I remember just getting in the mirror and going, God, why me? Like, I've been a good person. I did what they said to do: go to school, get good grades, get a good job, start a business, something. I followed all the steps. I feel like I've been a good person. What the hell is happening? And I
Yeah.
went from asking God, why me, to just crying, to ugly crying, to sobbing until your face is like unrecognizable, and ended up on the bathroom floor in fetal position. And I heard what I refer to as a still small voice, but I got this nudge internally that was like, get your Bible. And there was a scripture, Proverbs 17:16. It said, what good is money in the hands of a fool if they have no desire to seek wisdom? And it was something about that
Mm.
scripture. What good is money in the hands of a fool if they have no desire to seek wisdom? It's why my name on Instagram is Seek Wisdom, PCW.
Yes.
It's that reminder that this journey is about seeking wisdom. It's not about necessarily collecting all the knowledge and information. And I never knew those were two different things until that day. I looked it up. Knowledge is information and education. And going back to your original question, the reason that a lot of traditional personal finance education doesn't necessarily work is because it thinks that if you stuff information down people's throats, they're just supposed to all of a sudden know what to do with it. Wisdom is knowing how to apply it, when to apply it, where
Mm.
to apply it, with whom to apply it. They are not the same. And that scripture and that moment changed everything for me, because I'm like, all this time I've been gathering information. No one truly taught me that there was a bigger picture for how you implement, and that my whole life needed to be supporting what I said I wanted, right? I'm just over here chasing money. This is why the mantra of redefining wealth is chase purpose, not money, right? That
Mm.
doesn't mean that we don't make money. Like, I make money,
Yep.
but I'm not
Yep.
run by money, and I don't make every decision around what I do in my life from the lens of, well, how much is it going to cost, or how much am I going to make? I make integrity, faith based choices, right? And so I've been passionate about this now since 2009. March 9th, 2009 is when I had that bathroom floor moment. And ever
Mm.
since, I've just been committed to helping other people understand that there's a much more holistic approach to this. And it's really how I rebuilt my life and then rebuilt another seven figure business.
What did you do from that bathroom moment and with that new kind of lens of
Mm-hmm.
wisdom? Walk me through that path, because I think a lot of people have had those moments, though they might look different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like those moments of like, is this it? Is this what I'm doing? Is this my purpose? Is
Mm-hmm.
there more? How did you kind of follow that path, kind of down uncharted territory into what you're doing today?
Now, when I look back, what I recognized that I was doing was learning to trust my own intuition. Like, a
Mm.
big piece of all of that was I had the audacity in one of my most broken and broke moments to still believe that I should share this with people. Like, think about that. I'm facing eviction notices. I have had a foreclosure now. I went from a 6,000 square foot home in California to living in a 600 square foot apartment in Metairie, Louisiana, right? I'm riding dirty, meaning I don't have any car insurance. I'm making decisions between, do I get milk or do I pay this bill? Literally. This was my life, 2008, 2009. And I have this experience. And then all of a sudden, I feel this thing in my belly that's like, you should share. Now, I have to tell you, my first grade teacher, Miss Boynton, told me when I was 6 years old, Miss Cunningham, when you know something, you have a responsibility to share with friends. It's not enough that
Mm.
you just know it and that you are the know it all in the class. You have to share with friends. So, since first grade, I always had this idea that if I knew something, it was my responsibility to teach. It's how I built my original business in the first place. It was teaching people. And so that kicked in and it led to me starting my first blog maybe a day or two later. And it's still up to
Mm.
this day. For those who want to fact check, it is the ugliest thing in the world because I knew nothing about nothing. I owned a brick and mortar company. I had never done anything online. I had just heard of the term blog some weeks before. And I was like, maybe that's the way, you know? I started that free blog spot at seekwisdomfindwealth.blogspot.com. And it is ugly. It is
Love.
scrappy. It is like, I just had to start, right?
Yeah.
But I started blogging every week and just wanting to share. And I really didn't think anyone was paying attention because my mom and my husband at the time, they weren't even reading. And I was like, well, if they're not reading, who
Yeah.
the hell's gonna
Yeah.
pay attention? And I stopped doing it. I got discouraged after several months. I got discouraged and I stopped for a few weeks. And then a strange man reached out to me in my then Yahoo email account. And he said, hey, I hope you're well. I've been enjoying your blog. Jenna, I didn't know how to read the back end. Like I knew how to publish
Oh
the
my
things,
God.
but I didn't understand analytics.
Yeah.
I didn't know that people had
Yeah.
been commenting and I needed to approve the comments. I didn't know
Oh my
anything.
gosh.
And I say that
Yeah.
now because what I've learned is an audience of one is still an audience. I wish I could get in that old Yahoo account somewhere and reach out to that man and thank him because from there, it encouraged me that maybe my mom and my husband were not my audience, but there were other people out there who resonated with what I was trying to do. So I got back to blogging. It turned into me writing for a few magazines like Black Enterprise and Upscale Magazine. And then one of my articles went viral. I was invited to go on a radio show. Next thing I know,
Oh
I
my
ended up,
gosh.
by 2014, I was the personal finance voice of the Steve Harvey nationally syndicated radio show. That turned into me like writing my first books. I now have 5 books and my own podcast, Redefining Wealth, and we like all the things, but it came from that one internal nudge that said, you should share this with other people. It was scrappy. It was ugly.
Yeah.
It was imperfect. It was all the things, but it was the sincere desire of my heart to help other people. And that has been the sincere
Mm.
desire of my heart this entire time. Yeah.
I love this so much because I think something has shifted, especially in recent years, where people are so afraid to be seen as a beginner.
Mm.
It's like this weird thing where it's like when I think back, because I was very similar timing when I started my own blog, and same thing, like trying to figure out HTML coding and how to make a sidebar look pretty and all these things. And, it's so interesting because I think that somebody listening today that hasn't started yet,
Mm-hmm.
they have to take that audacious spirit that we had at the beginning of like, this isn't going to be pretty, but I'm going to put it out there. And I think social media has shifted that a lot for people where it's like they want to be seen when they have it all figured out and have it all
Ooh.
together. So they're never seen because they're not going to show up. No one has it all figured out and no one has it all together. What was a big thing for you when you started to figure out like, wait, I have my own approach? Because as we said at the beginning, there's so much information out there, right? Like we can take other people's information and regurgitate it in different ways, but like you started to develop some really impressive frameworks and approaches.
Mm-hmm.
What did that look like for you?
Well, it didn't come until I had my boulder moment. So let me take a step back
Let's
because
talk about that.
so I was known for a brand called Real Money Answer. So all the things happened from 2009. By 2014, I did my first interview on the Steve Harvey Morning Show. They asked me to come back weekly. And then that turned into a regular spot on Dr. Oz. And, now I'm in Cosmopolitan. I'm Spreads in Essence magazine. All of these things are happening and it's beautiful. But also internally, I have this little whisper that's like, this is not quite what you were committing to when you were on the bathroom floor. Because the other thing that I
Mm.
learned, not just the difference between knowledge and wisdom, that was also the
Yeah.
first time that I really researched the definition of wealth. And I didn't stop at the surface level definition, which the first one we typically see is an abundance of material possessions and money, right? Material possessions and money. And I kept like digging and digging and digging and realized the
Yeah.
original 12th century definition was the condition of well being and happiness. That's what wealth actually means. We've layered stuff on and basically said, well, when you have stuff, you'll feel well. But many of us have experienced getting the stuff that we thought would make us happy, and then we did not feel happy. Right. And so, reflecting way back in 2009, I was like, I want to do this differently this time. But this was an internal thing to me. I was doing the blog and doing the things, but on myself, I was experimenting with all the things. So that's when, my meditation practice really got into place. That's when I started to really take more of my physical fitness seriously. That's when there were just so many things that I started to do personally. Now, mind you, I just
Yeah.
said I started to attract all of these opportunities. I really didn't pitch much at this time. It was literally all of these serendipitous things happening where someone would say, oh, I saw
Yeah.
your work and we'd love you to do this, right? So I was starting to attract all these things, but I didn't know what to call it. And then as my career grew and I became more and more known as America's Money Maven, it became budgets, credit reports, debt elimination, all of the skill set stuff that I had learned and that has been regurgitated over and over again. But in my private life, I was doing all of this other stuff. So people were seeing
Mm.
the public success and assuming
Yeah.
that privately it was about, oh, she's really working on her credit. It's like, how much can you do with that? Like, you got to work on your
Yes.
character, like, not just credit. You can't
Yep.
just work on your budget. You have to work on your behavior. You can't just work on money. You have to be shifting your mindset daily. Like, there's so many other things that I was doing in my real life. So I'm on the Dr. Oz show in 2016. And the whole concept is like, we're going to help people save on their groceries. And while I'm really grateful to be on the Dr. Oz show, I'm also like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
this is like, I believe that there's so many other things. And that still small voice said, but you're not saying it. You're not saying it. You're going from
Ooh.
stage to stage. You're getting on platform after platform. You're on the radio
Yeah.
every week. Why aren't you saying the stuff you really do? That was the pebble. Then the rock was I actually there was like so many things that happened, Jetta, like back to back. I
Yeah.
was pretty disobedient. When you're like, oh, I should do this, your
Yeah.
spirit says something, but then you're like, oh, I'm too busy to follow it. Well, a
Yeah.
series of things happened. The boulder came when my site was hacked and all of my files were literally corrupted and deleted. When I talked to the hosting company, they're like, you sound like a nice woman. This is one of the worst hacks we've ever seen internally. That was the
Oh my
boulder.
gosh.
It was one of the boulders. I had already had someone else was trying to get me to abandon my trademark, a bigger company who I think knew I existed for a long time. But then when I got big,
Yeah.
they were like, oh, we got to shut her
Yeah.
down. So all these things happen. And I'm like, shoot, okay. And my attorney goes, is there anything else you could do? Like, do we have to keep trying to force this issue?
Yeah.
And I
Can we
finally,
pivot
can
again,
we
please?
pivot? And I finally sat down and I was like, I just want to help people redefine wealth for themselves. I want people
Mm.
to stop feeling like wealth has to be a certain dollar amount or you have to have a certain type of business, or when really you might experience this feeling of well being and happiness like at any level. I've had
Yeah.
moments where I wasn't making that much, but I was super happy because it was aligned and I was just able to do the things I needed to do. And I was like, what if we all just redefine wealth for ourselves? And it was like,
Yeah.
boom. And in 2017, I did the full pivot. Everything came down. I stopped everything. I like shortly after launching the Redefining Wealth podcast in September of 2017, by around April of 2018, I left the Steve Harvey show because I didn't want to keep getting sucked back in. And I love them. I'm so grateful for the 4 years I had there.
Yeah.
But there was something in my spirit that said, those people stumble upon you, but where you're going, people are searching for something and they need it
Mm.
in the way that you deliver it. And so I took inventory of everything I had done from 2009 to about 2016. This is 7 years. And I was like, what are the things that really move the needle, and
Yep.
backtrack and look. And from there, the 6 pillars of wealth were born. And I tested it before I actually launched. I also worked with several private clients and used it in some of my group coaching programs. And people started to have phenomenal success and really get back to who they were authentically as well.
Mm.
And that's where it was born.
I love that story. I hate that that happened to you. I think that's people's greatest fear of like, what if it was all gone tomorrow? But there's also some sort of beauty of like, what is worth rebuilding, right? Like,
Yeah.
you really have to face that question of like, if I'm starting over again, what am I taking with me and what do I have permission to leave behind? And while it's a terrifying thought, it also was absolutely a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Walk me through. Okay, I am obsessed with your 6 pillar approach
Yeah.
to prosperity. And I want people to start paying attention to this because we've had a lot of financial experts come on this show, and no one has ever talked about this with such a holistic perspective,
Mhm.
right? Because, like you said, we often think of wealth as the accumulation of things and money. And I do believe it goes hand in hand, and you can have a rich life in many different ways,
Mhm.
right? So, walk me through the pillars because I think that this is going to be really powerful for our listeners.
Yeah. So the first pillar begins with the fit pillar. It's about becoming your best self. And what I just always share with people, Jenna, is like, look, if you have a vision for your life, it's your duty and responsibility to protect the vessel needed to execute the
Yeah.
vision. We only get one vessel, right? And so we want to make sure that we are mentally and physically well for the journey. That encompasses so many things. I always say, look, it's not about a dress size or a
Yep.
number on the scale, because I have looked thin, like two people, and been completely unhealthy, like huffing and puffing
Yep.
going up the stairs, exhausted all the time, all of the things. But also, I grew up feeling very ugly. I was the ugly duckling in my family, right? Well, according to some of my family members. And I think about how, had I not gone to therapy at 22 years old and dealt with that childhood trauma, look at what I've been called to do, right? I'm on stages in front of thousands of people. My face is on books. I'm on national television. What if I didn't go and deal with that childhood trauma? It could have definitely just blocked me from the wealth that I desired because I'd be too afraid to show up. So sometimes we're
Yep.
praying for things that we don't have the mental capacity to actually sustain yet. And I think it's very important because we live in a time where people are jumping around from program to program and coach to coach. And they're always looking for the magic bullet, and really it's probably something rooted in an experience you had many years ago that is just, it just keeps manifesting in
Yep.
um doubt and self-criticism and not going for the thing. You don't, sometimes you don't need another marketing course. You need to deal with why you keep trying to hide even when you're
Yep.
brilliant, right? So that's the fit pillar. That's like the foundation of it. The people pillar is about creating relationships that matter personally and professionally. I always say, I don't want to be a public success and a private failure. And I had an experience once where I was on tour. I was going from college to college. All these young girls were coming up to me. Oh my gosh, Miss Patrice, I love you. And then I get home and my daughter's calling me the nanny's name because she's used to telling the nanny everything. This is several years ago, right? And I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is not, that doesn't
Mhm.
actually feel good to me. And when I focused on being more present in her presence, and our relationship really solidified, then I could go out and actually have more confidence and be present in my work because I knew my home life was taken care of. You know what I mean? But when we're
Yeah.
kind of half assing it in every place,
Yep.
it's really hard. And I learned over the
Yep.
years that there's always someone watching you who has the power to bless you, but who are they watching you be? Like, how do we show up with our team members, with our clients, with, with the people we're already engaged with? I really believe, and I know you have a lot of entrepreneurs listening, especially new entrepreneurs. Can we stop
Yeah.
saying that we want more followers when we don't even engage the ones we have now? Can we just keep it real? Like, you want more people to ignore? That's whack. Right? Because so much of what I built has really come from other people saying, I vouch for you. I'm an advocate for you. You made me feel this
Mm,
way. And I didn't even know who they were, what they did. It's just I treat everyone with the same level of kindness and respect and integrity. Right. So the people pillar has been very instrumental. And I also think the people that we're around dictate the language that we use. I'm around
yes.
people like in our group chat, right? I'm around people
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
use the language that I
Yep.
desire, who are not afraid to
Yep.
say the things. The people that you're around are going to dictate what type of financial life you have. It's just, it is what
Yep.
it is, right? So that's people pillar. Space pillar. The space pillar is about setting up your life to support you. I know you are so big on space. It's not just
Yes.
about beautifying things, though. It's about really understanding that the clutter that we deal with really blocks our energy and our creativity. And clutter
Yep.
is, we call it the physical manifestation of chaos in your mind. So typically, when you find yourself really stuck in something, especially as it pertains to your money, my invitation to you is to take a look around your physical space and look at what represents that stuckness, right? Like
Yes.
like when I was writing my first book, I was doing it in a guest room that was like half where laundry gets folded or just lives for a while.
Yes.
You know
We
what I'm
all have
saying?
one
You
of
know, one of
those.
those. Like it was like where all the Amazon packages go to die, like all the
Yep.
things. And I looked around that room one day, Jenna, and I said, is this the space of a best-selling author?
Yeah.
Is this what I would expect when I think about the authors that I love reading their work, right? What do I imagine them writing in a space that looks and feels like this? I got my ass up, cleaned it up, turned it over, told everybody how to respect it, how to treat it, how to honor that
Yep.
space. And my first book was written there. Right. And that led to so many, other things and other opportunities. So space is very big for us. And I'm doing this new thing where I'm teaching people in the Institute for Redefining Wealth based on their pillar, the pillar that they feel like they need support with. I'm guiding them through what are 3 things they can clean up immediately, right? To help them have clarity in that space. And that's kind of a new thing we're doing. I'm super excited about it. But that's the space pillar.
Love
Then there's the faith pillar, believing in something greater. I don't care what you say you believe in, but make time to practice it. It's just, I just kind of feel like this journey is it can be so hard in so many different
it.
ways,
Mhm.
and you have to be resilient. And I think most people don't hit the financial goals that they desire because they give up too quickly. And that's just
Mhm.
because we don't have anything to sustain us. I truly believe that nothing is happening to us. A lot of things are happening for us, but that's what I choose to believe. And because I choose to believe that, it allows me to look for either the lesson or the blessing. I take no L's
Mm.
in life. I take
Yeah.
no L's. There are no losses. The only L's I get are lessons. I take the lesson. So what? Now what? And I move on. And that's a part of me having really strong faith practices that keep me aligned and rooted in that. Right. Which is, I think, also how I was able to get off the bathroom floor and just like, okay, let's keep going. So that's the faith pillar. The sixth is the work pillar. It's about living your life's purpose. I don't believe that people follow their passion and the money will come. I absolutely despise that. I hate it. I hate that because there's a lot of things you can be passionate about, but you're not necessarily proficient in. I love to sing in the shower. Love to sing in the shower. I will sing Whitney and Mariah and all the girls down in the shower. No one will ever want to pay me to sing. I am passionate about it. I'm not proficient
Yeah.
with it. And I think it's time for us to, just become a collective of people who honor our own natural God-given gifts. I say God-given, but however that occurs to you, what are the things you're just naturally good at? And like allowing yourself to embrace them and use them, because passion is what energizes and excites you. And that's wonderful. And you want to be passionate about what you're doing. But purpose is, how do you become of service to others? So when you can marry the passion and the purpose, it's a beautiful place to be. A lot of people don't give themselves enough time to sit with their gifts and to utilize them so that they can see the blessing it can be. Because once you
Mm.
see that,
Yeah.
it invokes more passion, it invokes fulfillment, it gets you excited. Here's what I know to be true, and this is from my financial psychology hat. When you are unfulfilled in the work that you do day in and day out, you are going to mismanage your finances because you're constantly trying to fill a void. The
Yep.
void is typically filled when we are of service. When we're of service and we know how we're using our gifts, that void starts to shrink, but it opens up deeper and deeper when we're only doing things for the money, and it's
Yep.
just unfulfilling. Right. So that's the fifth pillar, work pillar. And the last one is money. It's about attracting the prosperity you desire. And I just have a really big emphasis on honoring where you are, right? Even
Yeah.
small denominations, honor where you are, learn how to respect money, learn how to have a healthy appreciation for what money is. And we have tons of, exercises and things around this. But when you start to do those things, as the denomination grows, you already have built the muscle on what to do. It's not that when I
Yeah.
hit six figures, now all of a sudden I'll be wise with money. That's not how it works. It's not like,
Hmm.
oh, now I made more, so now I'm going to save. It's like, no, even if you have to start with I'm saving $1 a week, what you're doing is just building the muscle and declaring for yourself, I am a saver. You're
Yeah.
embodying that as like who you are. So then as the money increases, it's not foreign to you to do the right things with it. And so again, back to your original thing, you know, a lot of historical personal finance education has guilt tripped and shamed people into making very rash, um, stringent, and I mean, really deep financial skill set things when they were not prepared relationally, mentally, physically, environmentally,
Hmm.
emotionally to actually sustain that and keep that going. And so that's why you see people on these waves. But when you do all of the other work in the pillars, you're ready to
Yeah.
do what you need to do with the money because you're not looking for external validation. You're not still dealing
Yeah.
with the same level of childhood trauma, or at least now you know how to manage it, right? You're like,
Yeah.
you're making choices that feel good for you and are authentic to you. And that's what the six pillars of wealth framework does. And I know it's a lot. We have a cheat sheet. I'll give Jenna the link so you
Yeah.
can
No,
do it.
it's
But
so I I love it and appreciate it because I think that so many people when they even hear the word wealth, they have some visceral
mm-hmm,
reaction to it, right? Like they either want it, they hate it, they're afraid of it, they desire it. Like there's some it's such a charged thing that we often try to approach. And what I think is so powerful about having these pillars is that you can start to strengthen muscles in areas that maybe you don't have such a deep emotional charge with. And as you strengthen them, you shift the identity. And I think you just said something so powerful because there's so much with identity and mindset and the stories we tell ourselves around money. And like you just said, if you started saving $1 a week and now you're saying, I am a saver, I am a person who saves, and that becomes a piece of your identity,
mm-hmm.
everything can shift. And so with the pillars, if somebody's listening, there was probably one of the pillars that you brought up that immediately gave them like that, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta tighten that up, or I gotta work on that, or I gotta address that thing that I've been ignoring. And I think it's beautiful because you can kind of move through those pillars and strengthen all these different facets of your life that will give you that rich life as you start to work on that money mindset. What tips would you say, Patrice, if somebody was listening and they kind of had that like guttural moment of like, oop, that's the one I got to focus on? Like, where do they begin, or what does that even look like?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you for the
Mhm.
radical honesty and just acknowledging, like, I need to do something there. Because I believe that when we feel that frustration, it's just an invitation to take inventory. And we
Yeah.
can kind of support you, not kind of, we support you through that at the Redefining Wealth podcast and the Institute for Redefining Wealth, because we start with a quiz. And the quiz really is about which pillar do you really
Yeah.
need to start the work in? And then I give like a bunch of lessons, 10 to 12 lessons about things that you can do, practical things in your everyday life that you can start to do to clear that up and to clean that out. And it's different for each of us. It's a
Yeah.
individual journey, right? I say I create 12 lessons or so, but you may only need two. But I think it's up to the
Mm-hmm.
individual, Jenna, to seek wisdom. It's like to acknowledge first, to recognize I need support in this area. And then what can I recondition? What resonates with where I am if I'm being radically honest? And also
Yep.
partnering that with what is your financial vision for your life? When you think about where you want to be 12 months from now, 3 years from now, I just heard your episode about 5 years, how you've evolved over five
Yes.
years now, right? So if we think
Yes.
about, well, where do I want to be in 2 years? You can use the pillars as a framework to say, who do I need to become in each one of these
Yeah.
areas? Because if you start just working on random stuff, you'll make a lot of progress, but you'll climb up the wrong ladder again.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll achieve things, but they won't matter to the bigger vision, which then leads
Yep.
you to feel unfulfilled and incongruent. So we really start with what's the vision, and then asking yourself the question, who will I need to become in this pillar in order to really see that vision come to life? And then
Mm.
get to work. It's not enough to know it, then you
Yeah.
have to own it. Because if you only know it and you do nothing about it, it leads to even more frustration. And I think that's why sometimes we're not honest with ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, this whole conversation is just so rich in that we're really talking about not just information, but the application of it and really figuring that out. And I think that for so many people, there's so much guilt and shame around money.
Mhm.
And it's because they've had the information, but they haven't known how to apply it. Right. And so it's like, well, clearly it's a me problem because everyone else, it's working for everybody else and they're figuring it out. And so I love the focus on application because there are so many different ways that you can apply all these tools and strategies that in their own right, they're not terrible. I mean, they're not really going to hurt you,
Mm-mm.
but I think there's not enough help in the actual application, which I think is like your superpower. It's taking someone exactly as they are, where they are at and saying, "All right, here's the next step." And then here's the next one. And that person gets confidence in the follow through, in the shifting of their identity. I think there's something so powerful when we see ourselves following through on something, we
Mhm.
become someone totally different and our belief about ourselves shifts. And you are such a super woman in doing that for other people and allowing them to like celebrate their wins. Like you're
Yeah.
just like this like perfect assistant of like, here you go. And now you get to do this. This is yours. And it's so amazing.
Yeah, because it's their individual journey. I always tell
Yeah.
people I didn't create you. So I'm not your manufacturer. I don't have the manual
Yeah.
on what you should do.
Yeah.
But what I do have is a lot of experience and knowledge and expertise after now coaching hundreds of people through this framework. And if not, we're probably in the thousands at this point. But you know, it really just comes down to helping you learn the process for how you process your own life so that you can
Yeah.
experience everything that you say you desire. And we're just really big on getting off autopilot and being radically honest about not only what's no longer serving us, but also what we truly desire, and then getting the guts to go after it. And while most
Mm.
of my clients, yeah, they're focused on their financial improvement, people's lives are changing in the process. Their lives
Yeah.
can't help to change. I just recently ran into someone who has been through a few of our programs and been with us for about 3 years in the community. And her husband gave me the biggest hug, Jenna. And he said,
Mm.
"Thank you for giving me my wife back and giving me a better version of her than I've ever seen." They've been married for like
Mm.
16, 17 years or something like that. But the hug that he gave me, and I'm like, she's doing the work. And he's like, but she
Yeah.
trusts like your space and your community, like, and she's doing it. And I'm like, that is so humbling, because to think about being on that bathroom floor in 2009, I
Yeah.
had no idea I had no idea that all of these things would happen, but I'm so grateful because I'm not perfect. I'm completely imperfect and yet being used perfectly for what I was called to do. And I
Mm.
really, really, I'm just really grateful.
Hmm. Patrice, where can everybody find you and connect with your work and learn more and take the quiz. I think taking the quiz is the perfect next step for any listener out there, just to get clarity on which pillar to start with. And again, that's just that starting point. But where can we get all of your amazing resources?
Yeah, you can take the quiz at patricewashington.com/quiz. And of course, you can download the Redefining Wealth app. So excited about that. We have purpose chasers from all over the world, literally working through the pillars together. And there's a lot of exciting and exclusive things I do for purpose chasers who are just in the app. And so you can download it on any Apple or Android device. And you can find it at redefiningwealth.app.
Amazing. And your podcast and your Instagram. Tell me those.
Yes, the podcast is the Redefining Wealth podcast. You can listen to it on your favorite podcast, wherever you're listening to the Gold Digger podcast. Just go on ahead and also subscribe to Redefining Wealth. And on Instagram, I am Seek Wisdom PCW. Make sure you tell me that you heard me on Gold Digger. That Jenna sent you, so I can text her and harass her every single time.
Your texts are the best harassment I ever get. Patrice, in closing, if somebody's listening and they have recognized with our conversation today that they need to redefine wealth for themselves, what is something that they can do today to do that?
I think celebrate that you've already acknowledged that you need to do something. Very often, we won't even acknowledge it because we're afraid of what has to come next. And just you acknowledging it is such a brilliant first step. And then coming over, taking the quiz, acknowledging which pillar you should start with. Baby steps, but those things are huge.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you have a quick second, take a second, make sure you're subscribed to my show. And if you love today's marketing tips, tricks, strategies, and life talk, then check out this episode. You are going to love it. So I was recently at a mastermind and we were on the closing day sharing our closing thoughts. And my friend Jim Quick was sitting right next to me and he said something so poignant. The topic was comfort zones. And essentially what he said is that there are two types of hard that nearly everyone is experiencing. The hardness that comes when you're stuck inside of your comfort zone, but also the hard that comes when you're trying to break away from it.